Yeah, I figured that would have planned, but it's always
You just think those cute baby pictures on Discord's gonna let you be late, huh? Works pretty good. Let's see who we have. Okay, missing Victoria. Okay, go ahead and connect to that Zoom session because we'll be using it to show off our applications this morning. And I'm going to try to grade while you demo, but it's pretty hard because, you know, all that multitasking is hard on my program this morning. So I usually will just watch you guys and then grade later when I have a chance to really be thinking about it. Because I can just be easily impressed by bells and whistles that don't really amount to much. Because I've got to really look at that code and make sure it's really worthy. But I think the biggest thing for this project is just getting back into C#. It's challenging. We can approach it so many different ways. I gave you some ideas for how we could inherit the system picture box control to use all of the built-in features of it and expand on it for our application. The videos gave you some other kind of alternatives of doing the same thing. So as we get into this more advanced C# programming, we want to be able to compare things like that. You know, what's different about them, what's similar, which things do you like better. You guys will notice as you're working on things that the more you can organize your code, the more you can put methods where they belong, data elements where they belong in class structures, the less code you're going to have, right? Because even though you've got it all spread out, now you have your, you know, die class and maybe a game class and whatever. It gets a little spread out, but in the end, you end up with just 1 or 2 lines of code being able to make major things happen because all of your classes are involved. So we're going to be working more with our upcoming lesson on classes and extending classes. So this is just the beginning of us doing that. So I think this is a nice challenging project. For our presentation, I don't want you to feel like this is a great big presentation or anything like that. We just want to share what you accomplished with your class. So we would like to keep it short. We have 5 minutes or so, and we can easily get off into too much time when we're looking at people's code and stuff. So be careful. We want questions, but not so many that we're dissecting their brain. So a good way for people to do it is to just display your solution, run it if it's running. If not, tell us what kind of problems you're having. Describe the code and your problem-solving process. How did you decide to approach it? Did you prototype without pictures and then add images, or did you focus on the images? and build a solution around it, like I accidentally forced you to, so either way. And then what kind of technical hurdles did you encounter? Some of these hurdles are gonna be the same exact thing other people ran into, so it's gonna be good to share them. And if you go last, it's okay to say, I had the same hurdle, and this is how I solved it, because some of you, may have done different debugging tools and different processes than others. So that's helpful too. Maybe you solved it in a different problem. And then explain what you think is really important that you learned. So any issues or bugs that you're having should be presented to the class so that they can help you solve them. So we don't expect everything to be perfect when we're presenting in our class. We're sharing what we've done so that other people can see our code and other people can help us with our code. So we're going to go that way with it. So that's how we want to do it. And I'm just going to move around the room, I think, so that we don't get too complicated. If you are unready to share, you can just kind of give me a sign or whatever. But let me say something before we go on. Presenting this project is really important because it does get you so used to sharing your code. All of the people that have gotten on at O'Reilly's for their internship, their student internships, it's pretty highly paid, works really well when you're getting ready to receive your degree. They say that when they ask you how to solve a problem in an interview, they're really concerned about the fact that you're able to think and you're able to explain what you're thinking. So they're not necessarily as concerned about people coming up with the correct answer as they are being able to describe the thought process that they're going through. Because think about it, you're going to have a whole team of people working together. If you can share your thought process, others can benefit from it and you can work together to solve the problem. Because we can't ever solve all the problems all on our own. So that's what we're working towards, is being able to share and say in a proud way, it may not be working perfect, but look what I've got. And something is better than nothing. Now, sometimes when I'm grading, I'm not on Zoom, I'm not being recorded, and that's probably good, because sometimes when I'm grading, I might say really derogatory things about students wasting my time. Not any of you guys, of course, but every once in a while, you're like, this was worth me downloading and opening, not. So, the majority of time, submitting something is going to be better than submitting nothing, right? So we always want to take that approach. We kind of always want to take that approach with work too, instead of looking at the boss and saying, well, I just blew it. I blew that deadline. And say, well, I've been able to develop this part of the application, but it's going to take additional time to finish it up. You know how much better that sounds and how much more employable you sound? I guess that's the big thing, is we don't want to sound like somebody who shouldn't be. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to set my timer here. I can't speak. Got it all set. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm never sure where to start. I hate starting always in the front and always in the back and all those kinds of things. We'll start with this group up here in the front, though. They're all here. They're all here to support each other. They're supportive. Now, if you notice, in our requirements, I don't say anything about working together with your group to present. But do be supportive of each other, and if you need to jump in, do so. Okay, so let's, however you guys want to split it up, the three of you.
Okay, so Hi everyone, this is Team Fantasy Club. We all work together on this Petals Around the Rose C# form. And I guess to get started here, I'll go over the biggest hurdles we face. For starters, I guess, just solving the puzzle is pretty hard, right? Like, did it take everyone else like a few hours, or was it just me? Because, I mean, like looking at it, it really like tips you into thinking that the color of the dice has something to do with it, but obviously it doesn't. And I don't want to spoil anything, but it's really just, counting, right? So that was hurdle number one. Um, I guess my second hurdle was I tried to make this look a little snazzier than uh, I really knew how to do. Yeah, so I wanted when I roll my dice to make like a sort of like an animation, and like the way to do that I thought would be to just refresh the dice like 20 times for every time you roll, but it would just do that like really super fast, and it would look like crap. So I thought that maybe I could put a pause, like a wait sort of function in between each roll, but that also turned out pretty awful. It turns out I would use something called thread.sleep, but that just locks up the UI, so who knows? So those are my hurdles. As far as what I've learned, uh, I guess the most important thing was how to put things into an array. And if I do that at form load, I put all of my little dice, all 5 of them, into this list actually. I could have used an array, but I used the list. And that holds all my dice. Let me run through it real quick. You guys know how it works. You just count the dice, basically. You count the 3s and the 5s, right? I also made this handy-dandy debug function. It's basically just it builds a string that tells you what all of your fields are. And let's see. Looks like the answer here is 4. So let's try it out. Hey, we got it with a pleasing emoji there at the bottom. I tried to mimic the form online. So if you get it right 4 times, it'll say, congrats, we think you got it. If you get it wrong, here, let's try 77. There we go. It's 6, not 777. I guess that's one way to do it. I also incorporated these menu strips, which I sort of kind of forgot how to do, but I remembered how to do exit at least. That was really easy. And restart is just application.restart, so that's easy too. I guess that's it. Otherwise, it's pretty standard. It's fields, constructors, methods, event handlers and stuff. I guess that's it. This was fun. This is a great introduction again.
What kind of classes did you end up with? Let's see.
Only one, just dice. And this will, it really didn't have all these squiggly lines when I was doing it at home. I think that's just ReSharper.
Yeah.
I should have added, for my icons, my dice icons, I used, with attribution, some way cooler icons than I could have ever drawn. So here's the link to get the icons. I made sure to do that. Okay, this is my dice class. It basically just switches along the random number and sets your dice property.
And then where are you deciding what the score is?
I think it was guess check here. Yeah, I have a little variable win streak correct, and basically as soon as you hit, basically all the stuff happens as soon as you hit the button, the roll button. Yeah, and it calls guess check and all that stuff. Oh, and this was kind of clever. Calculate petals. It just checks 4 loops through all of my dice, and it checks if it's a 3 or if it's a 5. And it just subtracts 1, because that'll give us what we want.
Cute. Questions?
I like how you included like the menu bar with the restart
Yeah,
on it.
yeah, that was fun. I almost forgot how to do that, but I only remember, I forgot how to do the save and load kind of, because you have to make like a file stream and stuff like that, but I remembered how to exit.
That's good. It's important, huh?
I never thought about like having a restart program. That'll be super useful.
Yeah.
So how do you update the dice in the roll method? I know that's been kind of an issue for some.
Okay, so basically, as soon as you hit roll, it loops through all of your dice, which you have loaded into an array at form load. And basically, there's just 2 methods that each dice has. A reroll, which just sets a different face value, and set image, which switches along that face value to set, the image property. So every time you click roll, it for loops through all of your dice. It's a random number. It gets the image associated with that number.
Great. Very nice, very nice. Give him a hand. Yay. So did either of you have something else you wanted to show us, or did you guys all kind of worked on that one?
Stuck at home.
Don't forget to get something put in TFS. What about you, Kurtjay? Did you have something?
I think I have anything that I could add to it.
Nothing you could add? Okay. No questions, you guys, for this group as a whole?
The only thing I would say is the most trouble I had was with just working the classes together.
Uh-huh.
Since I don't know why I couldn't do it for the longest of times, is actually making the rose die class go just to my normal one and input all the values into it, which was really tough for me. They always give me errors, and whenever I try to have it fix it, it would be terrifying.
Do awful things.
Yes.
So I think that, can you bring that one back up? We'll make sure I bring it back up because it looks so good. Show us your form load, please, please. So when we start out, Stuart has that awesome for loop to just load all of the images. And in the load images method, that's pretty much like the one that we created in class, isn't it? And so it's just creating each of those die. If you scroll down into your load images, we're adding that picture box to the picture list box, and that's the one that he's using in the for each command to loop through it to update all of the images later. And so it is actually just a few lines of code that can take care of all of that for us. But it can be hours and hours of investigating how to come up with this. So keep that one in your mind because it's really, really beneficial. Thank you, sir. Let's move to the next room. I like that. Very nice implementation. Okay, you guys. Again, the 3 of you, I'm just going to start my timer for each one of you. Whatever you guys have individually or as a group.
So this is group 3. We had a pretty good time with this project also. We're kind of close. I think every one of us kind of went our own way just a little bit, but we all accomplished the same task, which was to get it to run. just gonna run mine real quick.
Very
This is-
nice.
This is my rose application. And the first thing I want to say is that when I first saw this application, I immediately wanted to create a container for the rose and the dice face value and the first die, second dies, or whatever. So I ran off on this tangent of creating a panel, basically. Solution. Here. I ran off and tried to create this panel that I returned back, basically, and it had the picture box and the label and the first die and the second dice in it. And then I was like, well, that's not really going to work because how am I going to update the image and this and that? So then I stopped that path and realized that we could put it in an array, just like the gentleman in the front, right here. We put them in an array, basically, the dice. And then each time that we would roll the dice, we would just update the values within the dice. So, and one of the cool things I found out 2 or 3 days ago, actually, because of RJ, was that you could actually put a label inside of the picture box class and actually use the picture box class as the container.
Voila, so you had your container.
Right? So I tried to create a container as a panel and then put the picture box and put the label and the label. But actually, a couple days ago, RJ's like, oh, you should look at this video. And I'm like, oh, that is really sweet. So really. So then what I ended up doing was I ended up putting my labels inside of the picture box class, which was really cool.
Great.
So basically, this again, I tried to keep up exactly with the website. I did miss the 4. I didn't realize that if you got 4 right, but it does keep up with the website basically. And what else? The same way I went ahead and but I passed my dice value to the method basically to get my image back. I didn't make it a global variable. So I said, get my dice image from the face value, basically. This is another cool thing. When I instantiated the dice, I was able to set these here, basically these properties for the dice, for the picture box, which was kind of cool because it kind of stopped the code here for the create and start position. I had it here, but when I put it in the constructor and I passed my location to it, I didn't have to. I could just reduce the code here basically and put it inside of the dice class basically.
Do you guys think that's where it logically belongs, inside the dice class? Because we should be setting those default properties inside that dice class and then just updating them if we want to outside of it. So that's better placement.
In my accept click is kind of small, but it's very effective, basically. And I guess that's it for me. Any questions?
Came out really nice. It's really, really good.
Want to share yours?
Yeah, sure.
Very good. Give him a hand and then we'll look at RJ. We want to see them all.
Okay, so I guess what I'll do is I'll run it really quick. You can just see the differences. It's got a V1 at the top because I went back. after we got done with this, and I wanted to build a more robust class, and I'm saying that my class does basic functions, my rose dye class does basic functions. I wanted to make that more robust, like you were just talking about. So I did that. It's in a different one. I got it to work, but I can't pull it up here. So it is what it is. So anyway, this it goes to infinitum. It doesn't have a tell you you're good at any number, but basically you can hit accept yes right off of the bat, and it's going to tell you incorrect. Roll by, so it'll keep all of the track of your runs, best run, current run, whatnot. So for one thing that I point out, while I just got this out there, we spent a whole lot of time, or I spent a whole lot of time separately trying to figure out how to get it all to work. That as far as the defensive programming, I just used the form itself to enable and disable certain things so that I didn't have to worry about going in and writing code for defensive programming, and it seemed to work out pretty well. Entering string instead of a number, etc. Really, the guts, I would say, are somewhat similar. I know we all kind of went our separate ways, but essentially, this with the form load on my version 2 is all moved into a separate class. But here it loads, and it's only when it loads, it's coming over here to get the die picture and going back. And when you roll the die, your all the calculations are here, and it's pulling up the face value, figuring out what image again, and then printing out the value. So, and just like Rich said, I think that was like the big moment that we had. We all described it as throwing spaghetti at the wall, trying to figure out. We knew what we wanted to do, but we couldn't do it. So Rich had talked about using an array. So we just, what does that look like? And we kind of talked it through, and we got the array to work. I think in this version we used 2 arrays, and I ended up doing on the second version use only 1, and it contains all of the information. So that, but anyway, what you can see here is basically 2 different arrays, one for the image and then one for the text. So, and did I answer all the questions I was supposed to?
I think so. Can we see your array declaration?
Yeah. So here's where they're declared.
And Richard's was the same way, and Richard had asked me earlier about one of the videos that was posted, and so I wanted to kind of point this out. RJ and Richard both, if you notice, they're not using arrays, they're using the list class. And we haven't really covered that yet, but it's fine because it works just like an array, obviously you can tell. The big difference is that when we're using this list class, we're specifying the data type of our list using a generic. So there is a video out there that kind of explains the use of generics. Generics are these entries that are within the greater than, less than symbol. And like I was telling Richard, it's kind of a topic that could fit in a bunch of places, but it doesn't really have a specific place in our textbook. So if you watch that video right now and it's meaningless to you, wait until we get to the collections section. Otherwise, you can watch that video and it kind of explains these generics a little bit more, and they're really powerful, just like we're using here. So instead of using the array class, if we use the list class, it gives us more capabilities. We don't have to worry about specifying the size and things like that. So that's just a little bit different. So I just wanted to jump that in. Thank you. Any other questions?
I like your program.
Thanks.
That's beautiful. Give them my hand.
Here, let me, I gotta stop share.
So I guess I can show my own.
Yay.
So, I have a lot of the same stuff. I think theirs might have been like a little bit cleaner than mine. Like in my rose dye class, I really only have like, the roll function and the dice image instead of putting the picture box we use in there. But other than that, some of the differences I have. So one is I have this extra method at the bottom that basically is for when you press a value into the guess box, it won't allow you to enter any non-numeric data. So you can't enter any letters, and so that keeps me from having to add like an extra check to that, so you can only enter numbers basically. So I'll show you what it looks like. Like this, and I have a check for if you try to accept the guess before you roll, it tells you roll the dice. Then if you roll it and try to do that, it's enter a number. And then if you put it in, it'll tell you if you're wrong or correct, and it just adds it up to the side. So some of the other different things I had was for the accept guess to check to make sure that you rolled it and if it was empty. For the check to make sure that you roll the dice before you're trying to accept it, I used an integer instead of a Boolean, which I guess Boolean does make more sense. But I have to where I just roll click, and if you roll the dice previously, it'll set it equal to 1. And then at the end of the accept guess, it says back to 0, so that you can only enter that if you just roll the dice prior to it. So I think that's really the main differences I had. I had pretty much the same totals as them with the array and all that. And I think one of the most important things for this was figuring out how to build the class and use those methods to help further your main program.
One thing I wanted to mention, Ivy used, she mentioned that she used this roll clicked integer to indicate status instead of using a Boolean. And that, when we do something like that, that's called a switch. So we just refer to that as a switch in our program logic. So a switch would be something that's just like a Boolean. It's just that we're using a number value to indicate our status. So that's a very good way to do things. Lots of people prefer switches over Boolean. It gives you additional options, right? If something else would come up. So. Oh, it's beautiful. Any questions? It seems real clean, doesn't it? Very nice. Give her a hand. Yay! Go to study group 3. Or 2. I'm sorry, I was on the wrong line. That was Mary, not Ivy. I'm so sorry. I was looking at the opposite group. And I kept thinking, I don't think that's Ivy. You two have been in too many online classes. I never get to see you. Okay, zoom in for us, Ivy. Some tiny code there. Is that you? Okay, zoom in. Control scroll.
Thank you. I was like, wait a second. I never zoom in my code. Okay. So this is my code. Right off the bat, one thing that I just regret is I have this load image and value for each of my individual dices. And I kind of want to put in my rose die class, because in my rose die class, all I have is really just roll and calculate the answer for it. And I decided that I didn't really want to store the roll, because I was like, the form's already rolling and we only need to know the roll once. So I decided I just wanted to store the answer in the rose die with my petals property. In my form, I use the form list for my rose die to collect all my rose die, and it's initialized at the start. And when it's loading an image, it sets the picture box to a new rose die class and adds the rose die class to my rose die array list. And then here is when it calculates it, it calls the roll calc method from my dice class, and it gets the rose die class, so it knows which class it's using and the number, and it'll just set the image, and then it'll add it to the total answer, what the petals was from the rose dice class. And yeah, it's just a bunch of calculating win streaks down here and everything. And when you reload the dice, it just goes from the first rose die in the rose dice list and just reloads the method you saw earlier. Yeah. Here's my super cool game. So what's the answer? I don't know. He's a pretty man. Oh, okay, fine. 68. Oh, okay, thanks.
Mary, so you've had to make sure that's numeric.
Yeah. And I was wrong, so I guess I'm not good at this. So I just rage quit and not play it anymore. And
Do you
yeah.
just have random dice pictures?
Oh yeah, I was
They
like,
don't even match.
no.
Actually, it looks good that way.
Google dice image 1. Ooh, that's
I
one.
really like that.
I do too. Everybody spends all this time getting them to match.
I was like, I just need the little.
I was just like, ooh.
So yeah, that's my code. Like my main regret's just probably wanting to put this in my dice class, but I didn't know exactly how I wanted to do it, so this is how it came out.
I like using the case logic. It's interesting because in the past, everybody's always tried to use that integer, that roll number integer, and create an updated string, you know, with their resource name, and then load the resource that way. So this class is just kind of taking a different approach, which is perfectly fine.
That's actually, I was thinking about doing that, but I didn't know how to do it, and I was like, making a string of like a code line of code kind of looked chunky to me.
Uh-huh.
Like I didn't do
It does, and you've ended up using that case structure for your scoring too, so it's worked out, you know, in your logic, it's worked out really well. And RJ and I think ran across it just by accident yesterday. I think if we created a string with this name, we could do rows, die, dot, refresh or update or something like that, and put that string in the parameter and it would work. But this is a really awesome way of doing it, so it's good thought.
That's cool. Like this is my code. I know our group's code's going to be different. We didn't really stare at each other's code, but we definitely asked each other questions like, hey, how did I do this?
Mm-hmm.
But we kind of all did our own thing besides asking questions.
Great. Let's see what I got.
Might help if I pulled up my code. So this is. Oh no, it's doing it again. So one of the biggest technical hurdles that I had was that it wasn't pulling the correct version of my code when I was at home. It kept trying to give me the version that I started with. Don't know why it's doing it again.
Check your code, because I'm not sure.
Sorry, just give me a second.
That's okay.
Let me pause sharing. Okay. Yep, this is correct.
I'm gonna make an awesome, insightful comment here.
Sorry.
No, you're great. This is because Ivy has always taken online classes. Right? And so she hasn't had to mess with different computers.
Yeah, so
So
I have that
different
issue.
computers can really mess with you.
I had that issue at home where it kept trying to give me my initial commit instead of the most recent change set, and I spent like an hour fighting with it.
Oh no.
I got it eventually.
Good job.
So this is my code.
Control scroll and zoom out for us a little bit so we can see it. Make it bigger.
Figured, okay.
Thank you.
So just a bunch of like global variables up here to keep track of the player's score and whether they're on a streak or not and stuff like that. I kind of kept the same load picture class that we had, or function that you had kind of used as an example, just because I thought it was simple and to the point. I also used a switch case. And then this is just the code for only accepting numerical entry into the guessing box. And this is to check if the guess is correct or not, and to update the scores accordingly, and then show the results in the various text boxes. And then for the dice rolling, instead of reloading the picture, because I did try that for a while, but it just wasn't, I don't know, just couldn't do it. So I ended up just deleting all of the dice that I had initially made and then making new dice. Because I already had the, like, rolling the dice and randomizing which one came up was already part of the load picture function. So instead of just making a new function to roll it, I just deleted the old ones and then loaded new ones.
That work?
And so here is it running. Put in a guess, tells you it's correct, shows you your streak. Play again, and the play again button is disabled until you put in a guess, and it tells you if you're right or wrong. And then the guess is disabled once you put in a guess. And if you put in a wrong answer, it tells you that, and then it breaks your streak. It keeps track of your best streak. And that's it.
Awesome. Question? Good.
I like how you enabled and disabled. You set those values as kind of a safety, so users don't break your code.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember how to set the form so that the enter key would execute that button? I have one person that remembers.
It was accept.
The accept key, accept button property on your form. Let's do it. You want to change yours for it?
Oh, okay.
Bring it back up and remind everybody how to do that. So if you look at your form, and we just want to look at the properties for our form. So just click like a blank spot on your form somewhere and go to your properties window. And we want that accept button property. And then it should be a drop-down list of all of the button controls you have on your form. And you can pick the one. And now when you run it, you can just press enter.
Look at that. Fancy.
Fancy. I just wanted to remind everybody about that. We forget about those little things that just take us a second or two to make it nicer. So. Great. Thank you for showing us. Thanks, Ivy. Okay, let's go to our second to back row. Oh, boy.
Okay, so I wrote a script last night because I knew I'd be pretty tired today. So the process of solving this was to start by doing the simple stuff first, adding all elements needed on the form, text boxes, buttons, labels, pictures, and resources. Next, I wanted to do the random dice, which is part of the roll button, then was the guess button. After adding the main components, I added small details and troubleshooting. This included the try-parse, high score, clearing text for users, and disabling and hiding the guess button after pressing it once. Disabling the button was my solution to stop users from inputting 0 and guessing infinitely after rolling and always to the right answer. Hiding the button was my solution to stop users from guessing before swinging the dice. The hurdles I came was from the start. And I used a low picture method that we did together, so I tried different things. So I tried different pictures and dice to each instance of picture box 1. So I just added the rose picture for just one instance of picture box 1, created separate picture boxes on the form. Another problem I had was the TFS. I tried checking one of my edits and asking if I wanted server data or the local data. After clicking local data, my form will stop working. The form created resources in class I never added. I solved this issue by going to source control and checking out my project for edits and deleting every new data that TFS added. Then I checked it again and worked. The most important concept I learned is to have a plan at the beginning. My plan was to add the code for each component of the form one by one, and at the end I made them all fit together. Make time for your problems you will come across, because there are many times you have to restart from a save point.
Good advice.
So everything is right here. I put everything underneath the button 1 click
Mm-hmm.
and button 2 click, which is the yes button, this is the no button. Here's the variables I have. Start game. That keeps track of it. Yep. And yeah, because of I added several picture boxes that to do a switch case for each dice, but it made more sense to me.
Uh-huh.
And everything is exactly the same. Well, not exactly. I have plus equals 0. But the next ones I didn't even add them. Yeah, that's it.
Really good. Give me time. It is a complicated project, and sometimes bringing everything right to your main can help you see what's going on easier. So that makes perfect sense. Anybody have any suggestions for thinking about things like in a more of a class mode? Because I know it is a complicated thought process to pull things out of your main structure. And have-
What I was trying to do was after I built it a certain way, see that you could build it a certain way, but then have a base for that and pull out bit by bit, see what breaks, fix those, go back. Kind of exactly what he describes, but
Mhm.
that trial and error when you pull something out, figure out what breaks and fix that.
I think that you guys are all finding out one thing that's really, really important, and that's that a developer can be made to look really good if they have a good handle on the tools that they have to use. So TFS can be a tool, it can also be a weapon, right? You need to make sure that you are using it as a tool. So if that means creating some fake projects and checking them in and out and trying some testing, like changing your fake project at school, trying to mess it up to see what can happen. You know, this tool can make you, but more than that, it can break you. And that is exactly what the real world is like. When you go to work, you are going to be given certain tools that you are expected to use. The people that excel are going to be the people that get a handle on those tools immediately, because they're going to be productive. It doesn't matter if they don't know how to write the programs, they know how to use the tools, and that's going to make them successful in their job because they're going to be taught how to write the programs, right? But just like TFS, I can say, here's this tool, here's how you check in, you must check in, you must check out if you're working with others. We don't even have an opportunity to try that until we get to a group project. So there's lots of pieces of TFS that we could explore on our own. So use it as a tool, fight it, beat it, win that game. That's what you've got to do with TFS is you've got to win that game because it's your tool and it could definitely keep you from being productive. We've seen.
I have a horror story with TFS. I had the project folder, a different name in TFS, so I renamed it locally, and that was a whole nightmare because TFS just didn't understand what happened.
Right, and you just got to think about it like your TFS. You know, put yourself in TFS's shoes. You've been given this job to control source code. You are protecting this source code from the evil programmers that want to harm it, right? You are protecting it. He could be a disgruntled employee that is trying to mess up the whole source code structure by renaming projects and deleting things. TFS makes it very hard to do those things because of that. It's trying to ensure the integrity of this source code. So no, it's not going to be like, oh, you want to delete it? Sure. It's like, no, you don't get to delete. I want to know why. So that's why it's trying to protect you from those programmers. Okay, so let's see what you ended up with. Were you battling TFS on this one?
No, not on this one.
That's what I thought. I thought that was an earlier battle.
Yeah, that was last semester. Let me share first. Share. So this is my wonderful code that I have so far. I have all my dice images looking good on my program. And then I started setting up my code. But I guess my biggest takeaway from this is make sure you have your base code before you work on anything visual on your code. Because it's not very helpful if you have dice on the screen that don't do anything.
Just got to make them do some stuff.
Yeah.
Give them a hand. Got the dice there on that screen. Oh, great.
I made my dice images in Photoshop. Now, I think Aaron, he posted them to Zoom at one point, and I downloaded all the images. And then I took them and just changed the colors on all the images. Where are the resources at for the project? Oh, yeah.
Resources.
So I basically took those pre-made dice images and just changed the colors on them.
So you found some additional Visual Studio tools, huh? Visual Studio is pretty deep.
Yeah.
Goes far. You can definitely get sidetracked. Okay, let's see, Aaron.
Was that?
I think we're ready to see yours.
See Brian?
I think Brady's done. Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
All right, give me a second.
I'm jumping to group 6, skipping group 5. We'll go back. Our back row group.
Okay, so yeah, I showed some dice. I did a project in JavaScript that called dice. So I used some of those dice for mine. It's pretty simple with our layout. Kind of follow what we did on what they did on the website. Instead of using a
Text box though, for input, I use a numeric up down because one of the rules was that answer is always even. So in order to force that on the users, I use a numeric up down that goes up interval 2. So this answer is 6. You can check it, gives us some feedback, keeps track, and I disable stuff so that the user can't change stuff after the answer. And after rolling again, I can change things, clear the label. So now to the code. Okay. So I have a couple different functions here in the main, and then I have a couple here in my class. In the main, most of them are related to the form itself, besides one of them. So I have my load where it disables a couple things and it generates a dice. I have my the actual generates dice, right? And that's something we did together in class. I had the roll button, which enables a couple things. It adds to the total number of rolls, and it starts calling functions. And it calls one from the rows die called roll dice. And this here, it loops through an array that I've made. So I'm using 2 arrays for my pictures, for my dice. One of them is an array of the pictures. The other of them is the array of the actual dice picture boxes. When I generated them, I form load, and it calls the this generate dice. At the very end, I add it right after I create each dice. I add it to the list here, and it's my dice list. And so that way, when I roll my dice down here, I can just loop through and change each image. And in order to do that, I am calling random value from 1 to 6, right, which is generated here in the roll. And I return that. And then I calculate my answer here. Right, there's the equation if you never got that far. And then from there, I have my button that checks the answer from the input versus the correct one. And I generate some feedback. And then I have my message box for my rules. So any questions, comments, concerns, or fish?
I like your fish.
Thank you. I think the one issue I had, for some reason, Visual Studio had created a bitmap for one of my images. And so it was just breaking my code, and I actually couldn't find it until Mr. Riley came over and looked over my shoulder. So.
Some things with images are not logical. Can you look at your the generate dice method?
Yeah.
Bring that one up. I wanted to kind of point that out, how it's different than what we did, our quick example in class. In Aaron's example, he builds the rose die object here in this method and returns that rose die object. So the calling method can decide what to do with it. So this might be a little bit more organized as code than what we did real quickly in our example. So it's very nice. Do you think that it's a better way?
Yeah.
It's like a real pretty good way. And it could have been a method maybe in our rose die class. So that placement would be something that we'd have to consider.
So
But I like that one. It was really good. Excellent. Any other questions for him? Beautiful. Now let's see, Aaron we have Jackie here. I don't think that she wants to present anything to us. And Charles, I did see.
She can share.
I don't see him now. what we will do for our people that are gone today, we'll, since they're not,
Jackie said that she could share.
oh, okay, great. Let's see Jackie. I'll set up. Okay, Jackie, we should be able to hear you, I think. No, if we couldn't hear you, it said something about, Mike, hang on. It's me, try again. Mine was turned off. Let's see if that's where that message was coming from mine. Are you talking?
It looks like she's muted.
Go to the top right where it looks like a little camera with the X. Right above the Zoom group chat. See that little, go up a little bit?
That one? Is that for Jackie?
Yeah, it's in the URL bar. Click on that.
Click that,
And then
allow it.
always allow for Zoom. And then done.
Awesome. Now see.
She'll have to reload, I think, or try turning on her microphone again.
Close and reopen. Or refresh or something. You
Okay.
might have to close the Zoom session and reopen it. Shouldn't like that. Maybe. Leave that in the stick somewhere. Right there. Excuse me. William, why don't you go ahead and share your screen and we'll take a look at yours while we're letting Jackie get reconnected here. I guess, let's try Garrett. Sure, let's just show everybody what you've got so far and just tell them a little bit about, you know, how you've been trying to get up to speed and all that important stuff.
I will warn you, it's not the prettiest code because fortunately my dog decided to eat the flash drive it was on, so I kind of had to restart.
Flash drive dog.
So.
Okay, wait, don't go anywhere. You can tell me what kind of problem Garrett's having with TFS, looking at his screen.
Well, he's
Using
not
the
connected.
source control?
He's not connected.
It's in
to the
GitHub.
server.
Well,
It's
yeah.
been grabbed by GitHub,
Yeah.
right? So if you go to, this is one of the great fun things
Delete
about,
that .get folder, is that it?
yep, it's got Git folders in it. On our C# server in our TFS channel.
I have like the PDF with sign in and all that, but it's just not letting me sign in for whatever reason.
whenever you, you're signing in, the reason it won't let you sign in is if you don't do the OTC backslash in front of your username. That's pretty much 100% of the reasons that students have trouble not signing in is they leave off that OTC backslash. It's really important. Whenever you're looking at that channel, if you scroll back, there are some videos and different things where other people have had problems like that we've resolved in TFS, like things that are grabbed by GitHub. And actually with the GitHub thing, I just have a reference to a Stack Overflow article because they describe how to take care of that problem really, really well. So instead of me trying to reinvent the wheel there, I just refer to that Stack Overflow. So that's a real normal thing. The thing we can tell right away by looking at your screen that that's happened is this icon, is a GitHub icon. And so everybody that's fought with this knows, oh, that means it got grabbed by GitHub. So that's what that one is. So let's show us a little bit about what you do have here, and everybody feels for you and understands the trauma.
Let's see, so here. So I got my code here. Again, it's very simple for the most part, just because I have to throw it all together. Probably the biggest hurdle both before and after the tragic accident was that I wasn't sure how to get this little section here to change with input. So like if you got it wrong, I was gonna have the question change to like, oh, you got it wrong, or you got it right. And I just could not remember for the life of me how to change that to whatever. But as about all that come right here.
So let's update your roll dice method and we'll help you with that. Go to your roll dice method and let's add a new line of code at the end of that method. And let's just start typing text for your text box name. So just start typing TEXT. And right there, IntelliSense, if you notice before you, there you go, IntelliSense is going to show you all of the text type items that it can find in your current instance. And we're looking for a text box. So if you scroll down to text box, is there a text box 1? Let's try it out. Go ahead and press enter or whatever to drop text box in. So type a 1 for your text box and do a dot. So Visual Studio is saying, oh, that's not the name of it. I don't know why the IntelliSense isn't finding it. It should be. Is it a lowercase t?
Yes.
He's got it. So the property that displays for a text box is the text property. So just type the keyword text with the uppercase T, and then your equal sign, and then whatever you want to display in that text property. So let's just put a message. Let's just do like double quotes and say hello. And close that with your double quote. Or I mean, I'm sorry, you're pulling. That'd be great today. And now let's run it. And then if you click your rules, then there's your result. So that's how you can update your text box property.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so Garrett, whenever we start with our next lesson, I think that you'll pick up with us and move along. You guys, he needs support. You know, I'm not sure. Last semester, the instructor didn't really continue on too much, I think, after spring break. So we have to support some of our classmates here. So we'll do that. You're going to be good to go. Try to fight with that thing, get it out of GitHub, let me know, or one of your group members know if you can't get it, and we'll help you with that. So we'll get you there. Give him a hand. Hard battle. Hard battle.
In the most literal sense, ate your homework.
Yes,
Yeah,
it
I was
does.
gonna say, how do I say it without sounding dumb?
It's a likely story, likely story. Okay, Greg, last but not least. And Jackie's back, so he's not last. Jackie, hang on, we'll do yours after Greg.
It just starts up and kind of throws the dice out there to roll. I didn't use a starter image, even though I probably could have. You just have to enter in and guess. Then it gives you a print and disable your inputs. Just track. Number, not the right guess. Some kind of give you a clue to it. And link it again. So here is my code. Here's my rose dice class. I got help through grade with how to do the bitmap image, kind of with going off the random roll, the face value, and then it just goes into my resources over here and pulls out the picture. So that's where it loads, startup, and goes through and loads the pictures through there. Then I have another array that kind of calculates the values. Loads, since all the pictures are named with numbers, like 1 through 6, I can just use those values and just store them in another array. And then down in yeah, there's a guess here. And it sums the values of the array that have all values into your number. And then I take in the guess of the user and then it compares those two, and if it gets it right, it'll tell you correct. You can get on the street at 6. It was either 4 or 6, I don't know why. 6, but it gives you a master that game, and it does a 2-string to put the results back in the labels. And it's a try and catch. That's how I can use the use valid number. And then the button clicks are just a restart for the roll dice, and I just go through the picture array and dispose of the old pictures so I can add new ones, and then enable, disable the buttons and the text box. So the roll dice. You need to roll dice. To continue on. So that is all my code. Any questions?
Good. Great, your man. Thanks, Greg. Jackie. You ready for you? I think she's. Do you hear me? Struggling to get coffee, you know. Just waiting.
Oh, yeah.
There's your ear. Talk to it.
It shows that he's talking.
Try to find all the places. Okay, just show us your beautiful program. Please don't. It crashed. We'll just pause or make us a short video. That's what we'll do with our people who are unable to be here. We'll have them create a short video for us showing us their program so that we can see it. Jackie, we'll do that later, don't worry. So we'll have you make a quick video instead. I'm gonna go ahead and continue. Whoops. Sometimes I try to get rid of this thing and I can't. So we'll look forward to our last few presentations via video. I wanted to get started looking at our next lesson. Well, we have a little bit of time. Not a huge amount, we have some beautiful programs to look at. But let me set this as a student. When you're looking at your modules, remember that you have to complete items in Canvas before it's going to let you continue on. So for me, my student account, I have a few from the second module that I hadn't done. I'll try to next through those and mark the ones done that I need to. Okay, I think then I should be able to see the lesson 3 stuff now. Yay. So it looks like you have 2 assignments, but they're really related. They're due September 16th. So if I look at the calendar, that's a week from today, but they're due at midnight. So we won't be looking at these necessarily in class. So we'll just be turning them in. And we'll talk a little bit about what the assignment is, but let's talk about class libraries first. Whenever you're looking at the lesson 2 and lesson 3 instructor videos, those videos are from that old Doyle text. And I was showing Richard again how to search for that because I didn't post it to this class. But if you search for C# Doyle PDF, you'll find a, tentatively legal, but I'm not going to give you PDF version. But I think RJ had the right idea because it's pretty cheap to buy off Amazon, wasn't it? And I mean, to me, that Doyle text is a kind of an investment in your C# future. So it's worth $3 or $4 or 10. Now, this is the version that we were using in class before it became out of date. So you might find this version, I think, still sells for a couple $100 on Amazon. So that's why I don't refer you to it, because it's a very, very expensive book. But this is the 5th edition. I think the 4th edition is the one that you can find a PDF for fairly easily, and it's pretty cheap on Amazon. Now, it is not the latest version, so the 5th edition had a little bit more stuff. But that's why some things in our curriculum might be a little confused. I apologize for that. So I'll try to make it clear. And in this one, if you look at, it's not super clear, but if you look at the video list, you'll see these are Doyle textbook videos. So I'll make it more clear as I work. So we're going to be creating new videos ourselves this semester to go with that C# Pro textbook. So right now, the videos that are posted are for the old Doyle book. We're going to be looking at the same concepts explained in a very different way. Very, very, very differently. So if you look at the videos and they get confusing, try to focus on the similarities, not the differences. So I'm going to get started then looking at the C# Pro content. In our textbook, that C# Pro, people were talking about it before class, it does try to be a little funny. It is very dry. And as we start getting into these advanced features, that textbook is much more useful than it was with our early beginning stuff, because the beginning stuff, that textbook is just no good at all. It's beginning programming. It's like, if you remember how you wrote this code 15 years ago, and now this is how you should update it, and that's how the whole book is written, unfortunately. But the advanced stuff is pretty good. So we're finally to some things that are more advanced. And if you look at Canvas, you'll see, we make sure what chapter we're in, because if I just say it, it'll be wrong. Chapters are all over the place in my head. Chapter 14 of our C# Pro. And it says building and configuring class libraries. And if you look at the old videos from the Doyle book, they say component-based development. So very different way already of thinking about this. What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about creating our own DLL files. So have you ever used a DLL? You've seen those errors that DLL is missing or invalid. We're going to start creating our own. So throughout all of our C# training, we've talked about making our code reusable, putting things in classes because we could use that same class in another application, another system. Well, this is one way that we can do that. We can actually create reusable class libraries, and we can compile them down to DLLs. So think about if you work for Walmart. Walmart's just down the road, right? They hire a lot of people around our area. They hire a lot more people from U of A in Bentonville than from MSU. But they're always open to looking at people from MSU. And boy, they pay really well down there in Bentonville. So you're working for Walmart, and you're going to do some EDI processing with a vendor. They sell about $1 million worth of things every 3 months to Walmart. And Walmart never does anything via paper, via fax, via the phone, electronically. The only way you can work with Walmart is if you do EDI, electronic data interchange. So they're going to give you a DLL that you can insert and install into your system that's going to have all of their code already in it to make all that EDI transfer work. And you're going to be able to call their class functions, their methods, and make it all work just by putting it all together. They're not going to give you that source code. They're not going to just say, oh, here, this is how Walmart works internally. Here's our source code for you to run through debugger and decide. No, they're not. They're going to give you a precompiled DLL that's got all of that code already built in, ready for you to use. And then you can use that. It can be shared really easily. We're going to create some, not quite as monumental as Walmart, but quite a bit. Now, some terminology. Whenever we create a custom class, we're creating a custom type, right? Because whenever I say my data type in C#, like int, I say int my integer, I'm specifying the data type. When I create a class, I'm actually creating a new data type, right? Because I could say rose dye as my data type because I've created that class. So I've created a custom type, a data type in C#. And that's one of the reasons that C# is super powerful and flexible, that I can do that. So we can take those custom types, those class files that we create, and we can package them into custom libraries of code to use in other applications or for other companies. We're going to start by looking at our .NET namespace. Now, we've always ignored that, right? We've always said that namespace statement doesn't work in REPL. Get rid of it. Make sure it's the same in all of your .cs files across your project. And that's all we've really worried about with our namespace so far. But we can actually go further with that. So let's say we're going to create a little application. And in your textbook, they get into this application. And we will a little bit next time. But for this time, let's just talk about it. We're going to create a console app. And let's say we name our C# file shapeslide.cs. And our namespace is myShape. And we're going to create a class that defines a circle and a hexagon and a square. So we could have one .cs file that has all of those classes in it, right? We could say class circle and all of the stuff, class, hexagon, and all of this stuff. So that's allowed. Here's a picture of it. We have our circle and our square and our hexagon all within this one CS file, and this CS file is in our solution, right? So that's kind of like some of the code we saw today when people weren't feeling super comfortable about separating things out, right? We like to keep everything together. I'm that way. I never put anything away because I'll forget about it. That's what we're doing here, is talking about keeping things all together, all cozy. But it's not very flexible, is it? If we need to reuse our circle, we have to copy or include this whole library because we can't get to the circle separately because they're all within that one CS file. So if we change things a little bit within our project, and now we define each different class in its own .cs file, which I've griped at you guys to do from the very beginning, right? It's its own CS file, use its own .cs file. If we do that, now we've added in that extra flexibility where if we just need a circle, we could just include our circle and we wouldn't need to worry about the other data types. So you can see the difference in those two applications. What kind of things would it benefit us? Yeah, just reuse. So it's going to give us better reusability. It's going to give us more flexibility. I mean, we can see in the long run that's going to be better, right? Because we have each thing to its own space, everything in a place and everything in its place. Okay, so we could, within our application, our MyShapes application, if we want to create a circle, we could create a new circle. We see often we just create our data type and our new entity. So here we're creating an instance of a circle named circle with the lowercase. This statement above is doing the exact same thing. But notice that the circle name is fully qualified. So a fully qualified name is one that has the namespace name, followed by the dot, then followed by the type name or the class name. So these two statements are the same. It's just that the top one is fully qualified. Does that make sense? See it? And we've seen that a lot in our code. Now, whenever we're looking at this fully qualified type name, sometimes people assume that the fully qualified name would be better. They're like, well, that would be more specific and I should always be more specific, so that must be better. Well, that's not necessarily the case because they're too long, right? And they make your code be all stringy and you can't follow it and you don't know what's going on. So that's not necessarily a better way, but sometimes it is the way that might be necessary to avoid ambiguity. So if I have things that are named closely, I might have to use that fully qualified name. Now, another thing that I could do is use an alias or a substitution token. Now, this is the kind of coding that is hard for me. That doesn't mean it's not good, but it's something that is not in an area that I've used often, but I think it's very great. It's super flexible. We can actually use a using statement. So in our using statement, you know, up at the top where we're saying using system, using form, we can set up a variable name is an alias. So I can say this alias, the 3D hexagon, is an alias for the hexagon class in the My 3D Shapes namespace. Then when I'm working with that hexagon, I can refer to it using that alias. So watch that. That's one of those things in code that can be very hidden from you. You know, as you're looking at the code, it can be kind of hard. That's why doing, you know, a find all on a variable name or something can be so useful. Now I could also have namespaces within namespaces. So I could create a whole namespace structure like we've seen system.console, and we know there's other system.array type data types. So we can do that ourselves if we want to. we would just add another namespace statement. So here we have the chapter 14 namespace, and then within it, we have a My 3D Shapes namespace. So we can organize our project that way if we want to. Our using statement then might be using chapter 14.my3dshapes. That would make it to where I didn't need to fully qualify my circle, hexagon, and square data type names. Or I could set up an alias using that namespace structure. So you might see a company that you go to work for, they might have specific requirements. They might say the first namespace has to be like the system name, like accounts receivable, and then underneath that they want some sort of function like billing or something like that. So your company might have a structure to their namespace naming, or they might not. Yeah, whenever I'm working with these kinds of things, they mention that in Visual Studio, we can go to our project properties, and in our project properties, we can change the default namespace for when we add new classes and things to our project. So if we're getting really involved in creating a lot of new CS files, we can actually change which namespace it uses to pop into those new project files. So what we're trying to create here are executable files. The way that book describes it, it says a .NET assembly is an exe or a DLL self-described binary file hosted by the CLR. Let's break that down. What's the CLR? Chapter 1. Who can remember?
Common language runtime.
Very good. Did you hear him? Common language runtime. So that means whenever we compile a C# program, the compiler creates an intermediate file. Right? That intermediate file has to be executed by the common language runtime. It knows how to read that binary file and how to make that program work on the operating system that it's currently running on. So our common language runtime is specific per operating system. One for Windows, one for Linux, one for iOS. That middle binary file that's generated by the compiler is the same across all operating systems. It's the CLR that allows us to run on multiple operating systems. .NET is our whole host environment. So whenever we're working with creating an executable that we can use someplace else, we call that an assembly. So let's get some terms down. There's a lot in this one. Yeah. Get that little thing. Ah, I messed it up. Hang on. There's a little PowerPoint thing that's in my way. And when I closed it, it closed PowerPoint. I think I don't know if it's for the smartboard or the new PowerPoint. I'll figure it out. All these fancy new tools. Okay, so an assembly. An assembly is something that's been assembled. So an assembly in C# is something that's been compiled by the C# compiler. It might be a DLL file. It might be an exe file. Whenever we're working with a project where we want to create an assembly, we just want an output that we can use in another application. We're going to create a project called the class library. Let's try it. Let's open Visual Studio. So I want to create a new project. I'm going to go ahead and continue without code. because I want to make sure I'm connected to TFS. Looks like I am. Click on that, make sure I am. And if it looks like I'm properly connected to TFS, then I'm going to create a new project. New project. And when I'm looking at the template, I'm looking for this one that says class library. So the class library is the project type that we're going to use to create just a DLL. So we're not going to have a form in this project. We're not going to have any sort of user interaction at all, just a class library. So this starts really emphasizing to us why we want to keep all that user interaction out of our classes, right? Because we want that stuff to be happening off someplace else. Okay, so I'm going to create this class library. We can call it my shape, and then you can see if you can open this from home. The textbook does a great job at showing you how to get started with this, with the examples using that My Shape library. So you know I haven't given you access to the textbook a whole bunch like that. I haven't said go off and use that C# Pro book, but I'm going to use the C# Pro book to do those examples. The My Shape library with the circle, square, and rectangle. They're real short, and they're just a real quick example for you to see how to create your different class library items. When you look at your Solution Explorer for a project that's a class library type, you'll see there doesn't have very much. Whenever you look at the textbook, they're going to say the first thing you should do is delete class1.cs, because they're going to have you create another .cs file to be your shapes. Okay? So do take a look at that one and go through it. Now, while we've got Visual Studio open, let's do a couple other housekeeping things. First of all, we want to install that utility that lets us have the colored curly braces, but I'd really like to turn off ReSharper. So if you look at extensions, under ReSharper, we should be able to go to our options. And turn it off. And I found it, but it's been a few days, so now I can't find it again.
I think you can install and then all.
Huh?
It's on the very top menu. Go to extensions.
Okay.
And manage extensions.
Okay.
And then click on install. I think that will show you all, every extension installed.
Do you want to just get rid of it?
I like it.
I do. So if you're with us, we went to extension, ReSharper, options, and then we clicked on installed up here at the top. And JetBrains ReSharper Ultimate, you can just disable it. And the changes are not going to take effect right now. But let's turn that off and help remind people that aren't here today that we turned that on, because it is just really not being helpful. I'm letting it think about it. on our color-coded curly braces. If you go to extensions, manage extensions, we want to be looking online at the Visual Studio Marketplace, and we can search for, I think we searched for color-coded curly braces. And really the color-coded is going to give us a lot of different tools. So many different ones. The one we've used in the past is this VS4. So I'm going to go ahead and download it because I know it doesn't do anything weird to my environment. But if you're familiar with another one, that's fine. Now, once I downloaded it, I should be able to close. Okay, I've got ReSharper taken off, and I have VS4 installed, but I don't really want to restart Visual Studio yet until I check in my fancy DLL project I created. There isn't much to it, is there? But we're still going to use it to make sure you can get to it from home. So I'm going to add it to source control because I hadn't done that yet. Make sure it's right in my right place. I'm going to leave it just in my 151 folder because it's going to create a new folder called My Shapes. You can change that if you like. Now that I've got it added to source control, I'm going to check it in. First, check in, and click checking. Okay, so now that project should be available to me at home. So I'm safe to close Visual Studio. And I'm going to let it install. So while that's running, for Monday, go through the C# Pro book, the textbook in our chapter, and follow along with the chapter activities. We're going to continue on with the presentation, dissecting the reading, okay? So you don't have to focus as much on that, but focus on the examples, the projects that it steps you through. Try to get them completed because it's going to show you how to create some of these DLL projects. Then on Monday, we can continue dissecting the reading, trying to get the terms down and what they're talking about in those terms and relating that to our code. And then we'll really look at the assignments that are due on Wednesday. That's not going to give you a huge amount of time to do those assignments from Monday to Wednesday, but it shouldn't be a problem. They'll go really quickly once we have all the information in our head. If we try to do them early on, they can go very slowly, but they should go very quickly after the stuff we talked about Monday. So your mission is to dissect that C# Pro book and the examples that it gives you in that chapter. So stay away from those videos for now, those old ones. We just want to look at the book. Questions? Great job creating a really super hard application today, you guys. Get out of here and have a fantastic weekend. And week. I hate it that we don't see each other after Wednesday. That would feel so good.